Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bang on Sales show. Today, my guest is Harry Jones. How you doing, Harry?
I'm very well, Mark. How are you, sir?
I'm very good, thank you. Yeah, very good. I was just admiring our matching IKEA glasses. So yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
there you go, mate.
Do you want to kick off? Tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, so thanks for inviting me on firstly, Mark. So at the moment, I kind of work as a freelance. I'm going to say jack of all trades when it comes to SDR work. I do a bit of mentoring, coaching, training, but also I work as a fractional SDR where required. Been doing that since January of this year. So, Mark, similar to you, we've experienced similar things on our journey as we step out into the doing stuff for ourselves world, if that's the best way to put it. Um, Prior to that, I worked for Second Voice, an SDR agency, for want of a better word. Started there with the two founders as kind of like the first hire, if you wanted to call it that, and then worked up to becoming the leader of sort of the SDR function there. And then prior to that, I've sold more or less anything from printers to recruitment to high-end software. If you name it, I've probably had a go at trying to convince someone to have a meeting off the back of it.
Yeah, it sounds all too familiar, to be honest. How have you found the transition? Like, you started in January. Like, how's it going? How's it kind of compared to just being a salaried
Yeah,
worker bee?
yeah. So I did do it a bit for a short amount of time prior to joining Second Voice. I did it for about 6-7 months. I've always found myself to be quite independent, so I'm not one of those people who needs someone to be looking over my shoulder all the time to make sure that I'm doing what I'm doing. So, and I've always liked to be able to work on different projects. I think that the pros are that you're the master of your own destiny. You can take on as much or as little work as you want to do, but the cons of that is that you're always looking for more work as and when it comes through. I'd say you have to have an element of believing in yourself, especially when you're cold calling. You'll probably know this as well as I do, Mark. Like, if you're going to spend all day on your own making hundreds of dials and not more often than not, that's going to lead to someone, replying negatively. You've got to have a bit about you to do it. So it's not for the faint-hearted, but I guess, I guess the biggest transition is, going from being in an environment where you're with like 20 people who are all doing the same thing to on your own doing it. It's slightly different.
Yeah, no, I like that. I did a podcast with Sean Cease recently, and he said it really stuck with me that if you want to be successful in sales, you need to be willing to live a life of quiet desperation.
Yeah.
Kind of like, if you're failing 95% of the time or whatever, then you're probably doing really well for yourself. So
Yeah.
you just have to remember that. Like, obviously transitioning into doing this myself, yeah, like you'll have the odd little dry spell here or there, and I think working multiple campaigns for clients helps with that.
100%.
Whatever it is, a day or two or whatever, without booking anything or really making any headway, and you start to think like, oh my god,
Yeah.
and then you just have to remember, no, come on, you've been doing this for long enough. So it's nice to have that kind of reminder, right?
100%. And I think that's the magic of being able to work on multiple clients and also like kicking off campaigns fresh and new, because I think, once you've been selling the same thing sort of over and over again for like a year, 2 years, whatever it might be, sometimes it can get a little bit stale when you're like, everything that you're going to say off the back of your hand. Whereas like when you're starting something that's new, it's exciting, it's not been done before. And it's like that satisfaction of getting a breakthrough is so much better than, and the client saying, thank you, cheers for that, than, having a tough day and you're having to repeat the same thing over and over again or slightly change or whatever. It really, it's what keeps you going, isn't it?
Yeah. Perhaps you can tell me what you think of this. Like, we find that when we're kicking off with a new client, there's not for all of them, but for some, there's a bit of a bedding in period where you're testing. You've got a bit of a hypothesis around the ICP, the messaging, what it needs to be, the overall approach, different objections, questions, and you have to kind of map that out with those initial calls that you're making. And then once it clicks, that's like so satisfying. And do you go,
100%.
yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And like all plans are good until you get punched in the face, right? Like, so often you think that your script's going to work, you think you've nailed your ICP, you think the persona's totally right, and then you get on the phone and then 10 people tell you to, for want of a better word, to F off, and you're like, what have I done here? Like, what? This should work. And then, you know, you constantly changing, testing, iterating, and then eventually when you get that breakthrough, it's like that knockout punch, isn't it?
Yeah. Have you had any that come to mind that are like been real tricky ones where it's like taken longer? Or
Yeah, so I worked a campaign like earlier on this year where we were selling electric vehicle chargers into schools, where they were offered like there was a government grant going around where you know, it was almost a freebie for them. So like, you know, you could ring them up and like, this is practically a free EV charger like that they could have installed in their school. It doesn't take a lot of work. But actually, at the time, you know, you had to realize that if you're calling someone who works at a school on their personal mobile number, they don't get cold calls like you or I would do, Mark, like from software providers or whatever. The only people who cold call them are like, hello, have you been in an accident that's not your fault? Your car insurance is due. Do you want to upgrade on your mobile phone? Even worse scammers than that. So to them, they can't differentiate between us with a legitimate product or a legitimate need that they might have, or someone who's trying to scam them. So actually, one of the things we realized quite quickly was calling people on their mobiles counterintuitively to what any other campaign would say didn't necessarily work. It was much easier and you'd have a much more fruitful conversation if you called the school's reception and you said, hi, can I speak to Mrs. So-and-so who looks after the facilities. They put you through straight away. They go, oh yeah, thanks Harry, like you're a nice lad, I'm more than happy to talk to you, you know. So it's really interesting in that. And what you learn is that what works in our world of, you know, mainly B2B, whether that's software or tech or whatever, doesn't necessarily translate into the wider world of different products and different services to people who aren't used to maybe the direct sell, for want of a better word.
yeah, that's really interesting actually, because we call a lot of personal numbers as well, like personal mobile numbers, and yeah, it's like often, you know, you hear it a lot. Where did you get my number? This is my personal number, all of that sort of stuff. And it's, you know, I find that just being open and saying like where you got it 100%. From, if they want an opt-out link or something like that, then fair enough. And often you can then just ask for that permission again and then get into the conversation.
Okay.
But it is interesting because I'm thinking about more. So we're typically calling, you know, a lot of like VP and above C-suite level personas. But I have noticed that when we try to call more like mid-level management, that's where maybe those people are a little less used to getting those cold calls, as you've said. So calling their personal numbers immediately gets their guard up. I could be wrong. It could.
No, I agree, and I think it very much depends on the type of business, right? If you're calling like what I call a business that provides a service business or whatever, you know, like a recruitment agency or a marketing agency or whoever, like, or they are relatively active, like on LinkedIn, you know, they use social media all the time. They're pretty receptive on getting calls and things like that. So someone cold calling them, albeit it might come through on their personal number, it's not as big of a shock to someone who might work in, say, a hospital or a school or a legal firm where, you know, they're head down all day doing their day-to-day tasks. They might not use LinkedIn, they might not use social media at all. So for them to get a call out of the blue from someone they don't know, that initial shock factor is going to be so much more than someone who's just, you know, who's so used to having different forms of communication every day in their day-to-day jobs.
Yeah, that's a really good point actually. How did you find calling like school receptions? Are the gatekeepers quite tricky, or are they a bit softer because it's a school?
You know what, it was a mixed bag, to be honest, and I think that the most difficult thing was pinpointing people down to like where they were, because naturally, you know, they're on duty, they're doing classes, you know, often it's a teacher who's the person who's responsible. So it's a very, very different, it was a very, very different campaign to what I was used to previously. Probably I only worked on it for a short period of time. So yeah.
Good fun. So I know another thing we were going to talk about was like bringing personality into sales. I think like just being human, right? Being a normal person. Tell us about that, because, you know, I think it's all too easy, and I've seen it, to just come across a bit scripted, or even like, even if you're not reading from a script, like, so in my example of like working as an AE in various roles, you go into a discovery call with somebody and you've got like a list of things you want to know.
Mm-hmm.
And that can, it's very easy to be like, right, I've got these like 5 questions I want to ask.
Yeah.
And you're just thinking about the next question you want to ask. It might be a bit different where you've come from, but like,
Yep.
yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you, Mark. I think I was very guilty, sort of relatively earlier on in my career, of like, I'd have my set questions, whether it was on a cold call or on a discovery call, and it would be like, can I answer those? Can I answer those questions in as quick as time as possible? Not even think to get to know the person, not even really ask any other human touches. Like, how, I know it's cliche, but it's like, if it's the summertime, reference to summer holidays. If it's like the football season, reference to football season, stuff like that. And I know some people don't like doing that, or sometimes dissuade people from doing that. But I think a little bit of just human interaction at the start of any conversation, whether that's on a cold call or on a discovery call, always works well. But yeah, back to the point about the questions, you sometimes you can feel you just rush through them, you get all the information, qualify in, qualify out, and it just seems like a mechanical process of like getting that person through to the next stage. Where actually, if you're able to open up that conversation, get to know people on a human one-to-one level, and uncover needs that you, or pains that you might not have thought about before, because they're talking about, Harry, I've got like 5 AEs in my team, like they're all stretched, we've got a lot of our projects take a really long time, and they want to start cold calling, but they just don't either have the time or the know-how to do so. Like, and whereas if you're just going through those rigid questions, it goes, oh no, they don't cold call. Where it's like, get them to open up more on a discovery call, for example, but then on a cold call, you're calling this person out of the blue for the first time ever. They have no idea who you are. They have no idea what your company is. And like, often, getting a laugh at the start of the call. And I think there's a fine line between having personality and being cringe. Like, for me, it's like, if you're going to ask someone's favorite topping of pizza, it's like, why the bloody hell are you doing that, man? Like, what relevance does that have? Like, yeah, you might get a cheap laugh, and yeah, you might get a few minutes out of it, but you're really underselling yourself and you're underselling your craft. Where if you make it personal to them, like, oh, I see you're a marketing manager, it's coming up to Christmas time, I'm guessing you're going to have to pump a load of content out over the next couple of weeks. Like, that's still using personality, but it's making it relevant to what that individual's brain is thinking at that moment in time, rather than just a cheap laugh, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I love that. I don't ever want to say this. You just reminded me of the guy I used to work with. If you're watching this, I love you, man. Don't worry. But he used to have like his go-to icebreaker question, whether it was with colleagues, client visits. So he'd be like, "If you could be any biscuit, what would you be?" And he would just ask this like point blank to people, and you could see them like cringing internally with it. But yeah, the thing about like balancing just being like normal, but or getting a laugh or versus making someone cringe or putting them off. I think there's you need a bit of like emotional intelligence to do
exactly
that. You need to know when it's appropriate and not. But the thing I wanted to kind of a bit of a counterpoint. So I've noticed with myself, when I'm making a cold call, I've really had to like slow myself down, really control my inflection, my pace, my tonality and everything, because I speak fast. It's probably come from years of watching YouTube videos at like 1.5 speed and stuff like that. I just assume everybody talks like that. And yeah, I found that by adopting that, like Sean calls it, late night radio DJ voice, from someone else, having that slightly deeper tonality and everything, has really helped me. Like the results are noticeable. So is there, I think you've already kind of said this, but is there a balance between like, being yourself, but also adapting to the person?
Yeah, I agree with you, man. And I think I had that massive problem myself. I'm a massive yapper, and naturally I talk at 100 miles an hour. Like if I'm talking to someone in a pub or socially or whatever, like don't come up for F sometimes, which often my friends complain about. But I learned very quickly, like my first sales job, I was selling printers, and weirdly, I started to put on a weird phone voice, and I wasn't being myself, and like I was like trying to be someone but I wasn't. I was trying to think like I was only 20 at the time, and I was like, I have to talk in a certain way because I'm in this big bad professional world. Where actually I was like, oh no, my manager at the time was like, just be yourself, Harry. Like, even if you do speak a bit too fast or you might not say everything that's totally right, that's better than trying to be someone that you're not. Like, I've always had in my head, like, be the first you, not the second someone else. But I know it's a bit deep and philosophical for the point that you made. But I guess back to the point and finding that balance, it's like, yes, you can have personality, but if that means that you're going to just yap on and the person can't understand what you say, it might be a case of just toning it down a bit, or maybe picking one or two things that you want to find out or you want to say or you want to use to do that, and then rehearsing them sort of over and over again until the point where they become sort of natural second nature, but isn't something that they're expecting, or isn't something that they're necessarily going to think, oh, that he's reading off of a script there. So I guess it's practice makes it perfect. I think my advice, if you were just starting out, would be to try and just get that tone and inflection and pace right first, rather than trying to throw loads in. But once you're comfortable in that, after 3 to 4 months, be reactive to what the person's saying rather than what's in front of you as a script, and then try to throw in bits based off of what you're hearing from the prospect on that call, rather than trying to like just throw it in there for the sake of it.
You said about getting like deep philosophical or whatever.
Yeah.
I actually think that like it's quite a deep, like emotionally charged thing, isn't it? Because like there's a reason why we put on that phone voice, or why we might speak a bit too high, a bit too fast, right?
Yeah.
It's from like, I don't know, it's pretty different for different people. A lack of confidence, a lack of self-belief, or like as soon as you're making cold calls, there's just that little squirt of cortisol that you're getting that's like
yeah,
a bit higher than it normally is. And like for me in the past, like that had been a blocker to me being myself. And I'll find myself like leaning in on a Zoom call, or like, and I get off the call and I realize like, I've barely been breathing. I'm like, hold on, stuff like that. I've noticed that, and I don't know how you like. How do you become that? Like,
so I'd say I say this to all of the reps that I start coaching all the time, and like for example at Second Voice, we'd have people who'd never even known what a cold call was, like come through our front door, and they have all of the skill set and they can definitely do it, and in role plays and in practice they're fine, but then they get thrown off the boat and they can't swim, so they're left flapping away and paddling, and it's just natural, man. Like when you start your career, you worry about the first cold call you're ever going to make, right? You think, oh, I'm going to look like such an idiot. I'm going to mess that up. Once you made 100 cold calls, you worry about, oh, was my opener not the best? Or was my pitch slightly rushed? Or did I ask the wrong questions? Once you've made 1,000 cold calls, you start to think, oh, are my metrics looking right? Have I had enough conversations to equate to the meetings that I want to book and the targets that I've been set? Once you've made maybe hundreds of thousands, if you're in the league of us, Mark, you're worrying about other things. Like you're worrying about, is this client going to sign, or am I going to be able to deliver what I promised to them? So you're always going to be stressed and worried about something. It's just that pendulum will switch from the skill that you've been taught to bigger and bolder skills that you're going to learn in the future. So I would say you never lose it and it never goes. It just shifts into different spots. So I guess, I know some people who are mad successful, like AEs and stuff, and who still get nervous when they have to cold call. But for me, if you stick me in a demo and I have to like look someone straight in the face for half an hour, I'm thinking like, am I looking over there? Am I making sure I'm making eye contact? Am I doing this? So, it's different. People worry about different things. And I think one of the best things is to talk about it. So if you naturally have something that you're concerned about, go to your line manager, go to one of your mates, go to one of your colleagues and be like, you know what, I've been trying this week. It hasn't necessarily worked out how I want. Like, what have you been doing, or what can you advise me? And you learn so much. Like, it's been blessed, like talking to you, talking to Sean, talking to Henry Clayton, who I know he's been on this pod before. Like, we're always sending ideas to each other and like, I've tried this, I've tried that, and it really helps because everyone's kind of going through the same thing. So firstly, talking to someone, then you realize that you're not alone. And then after doing it for so many times, you'll then be like, okay, my worry has just shifted to something else. And then you repeat the process over and over again.
I love that. I love that. And I suppose just to add to that, like, oh, you kind of said some of this, but like
Yeah.
me, it's you got to get the reps in, and you have to. It's it's like it's like your body, like your muscles or whatever. Like if you don't use your body, you're going to get stiff. You're going to get a little bit weaker or whatever. But once you get those reps in, that muscle memory comes back. You do some stretching, loosen up, whatever, and it's exactly the same. Like if I've been on holiday, I come back, I feel a bit like, oh, I don't want to pick up the phone or whatever. But then once you get 20, 30, 50, 100, whatever dials in, you've re-greased that groove, as the saying goes.
Yeah, I get that, and I'm the same, man. Like, there'll be days when I'll come in and I'll be like, I'll have a conversation. I think, God, that is absolutely rubbish. Like, what have I done there? And then you listen back to it, and you're like, okay, I know that. Speak to someone. Okay, I've done that. What do you think? Try that. Like, I think that's coming back to the bit about freelancing. I guess that's the one thing you kind of miss from being in a team environment. It's just that bouncing of ideas. But I guess that's the beauty of community, where you can meet people who are doing the same thing, and you can do it with them as well.
And in a way, that's even more helpful because because we're working multiple campaigns, selling like different products to different personas and all kinds of different things, right? Having a network of people that are also doing different things. You don't get too kind of like myopic, like tunnel vision with what you're doing.
Yeah.
So that definitely helps. Just another thing as well. I feel like I've mentioned this on another podcast in the past, but something I got really early on in my career from Grant Cardone, of all people, and he was I'm going to be paraphrasing in there, but he talks about how like that lack of confidence or fear in many areas of life, it fundamentally comes from unknowns or unanswered questions.
100%.
You go into a situation, you don't know what to expect, so naturally you're a little bit more nervous. So like if you're on a call and you hear an objection and you haven't figured out and step back after that call and thought about how to address it next time, of course you're gonna flounder, to use your arm.
100%. Yeah.
So how is that part of like the process that we were talking about, like testing messaging and so on?
Yeah.
Is that like, right, I've hit this roadblock. All right, well, I stumbled on that call, but how can I do better next time? Do you map all that out?
Yeah, 100%. I think I've got a really good example of this. So, started this year, and one of my existing clients, Good FX client, and I don't come from like a financial background at all. Obviously, I know what FX is, but in my head, it was like, I need some euros to go for when I go on holiday, things like that. And I obviously knew of the sector. I knew roughly what it is and what it equated to, but like I was coming at it from as a bit of a novice, and it was just me relying a lot on my SDR skills to be able to do that. And I think early on, what I found was I was handling a lot of objections. I was just using, like, for example, common, SDR objection handles when it comes to like budget or timing or, I'm not the right person, whatever that might be. And, those objection handles almost get bred into you over a certain amount of time. And, most products you can use a generic handle. But what I was quickly finding was that, I need to be more specific. I need to be more specific to the actual hurdles that I'm having to jump over, because it's relating to specific requirements that come to that product. So I sat down, I worked with Tom, who I work with, and Rob, who I work with there. And I was like, listen, guys, can you just educate me as much as possible on this product so I can understand what to say? And I'm not talking about, and I think sometimes as an SDR, you can over-educate yourself in that you start to go into too much of discovery on those first cold calls. But I just need to learn in one or two lines how to overcome if someone says we're not doing this or we're not doing that. How can I basically disarm them and then give them some information which will help them see them in a different light, and like rather than it just be a typical generic sort of SDR objection handle. So that was really helpful. I think just my process is just ask for help, ask, like never be scared of asking stupid questions, man. Like I've asked some questions that I'm pretty embarrassed about talking about, and I certainly won't mention it on this podcast, but just keep asking, man. And because people will help you, and getting the word from the word from the horse's mouth, is that how you say it? I don't know. I'm terrible with these phrases, but that will help you in the long term.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny what you're saying about having too much like knowledge or product knowledge, too much being too product specific, right? Like it reminds me of there's a book I always reference it, Jill Conrath, Agile Selling, and she's talking about like when you're starting a new role or like learning a new business, a new product or whatever, and she says like the most important thing in your first 30 days or whatever is to learn, she calls it situational credibility, I think. Basically, can you hold a conversation with the ICP that you're calling? And
Yeah.
you don't want to be an expert, but can you sound credible? And it's like, it's totally right. It's understanding not the product you're selling, but their world and their kind of common challenges.
Yeah.
And part of that is, as you're saying, is like figuring out, they say A, what's this little short snappy B that I can say? As you said, kind of disarm it a little bit and help reframe slightly. And usually that's not, oh yeah, but we've got this widget that does this. It's more like, oh, it's interesting you say that, because we do hear that from a lot of people in your world, but what they often find is that or you know, something like that.
It's the outcome, isn't it, rather than the actual solution itself. It's like what is that the outcome of the problem that they are facing, rather than the problem itself.
Sure, yeah. Cool. So just staying on, like, well, we can take this where you want, really. I was thinking like personality thing more. Like, do you have anything else to add to that, like how it kind of shows up in what you're doing?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest challenges, I think, for all people doing cold calling is not to sound too scripted, and it's to be like, you know, I think now most people who've been in sales for any amount of time can really cotton on to when, you know, you've got a script in front of you, you've got a load of objection handles to the right, and you're reading off of them both. It's like, oh, someone said budget. Pause. I'm going to quickly read my budget objection handle script here, and it's like you can really tell that. And I think, you know, I've had some people cold call me who are really bloody good at it, and I've said to them like first time, like, I can tell that the script that you've written and the objection handle that you've got is great, but to me as a buyer, I feel like you're just reading off a script and not actually listening to what I'm saying. So I guess the biggest thing to bring personality into it, and I guess the number one thing in sales, is just to listen. You know, listen to what that person is actually saying rather than what is in front of you, because, you know, someone could be talking about a totally different issue to what you think you're talking about, and then you reply with something because it's there in your script and it's wrong, and then you've completely derailed the conversation. So if you're able to listen and pick up key points of information, then it makes it so much easier for you, because you can just come up with something that's creative and which is you know, personal to that individual, rather than just feeling that you can funnel them through something that's already been predetermined.
Yeah. I think again that comes from getting out of your own head.
Yeah,
there's a certain amount of self-awareness, I think, and you need to have, I don't know, like it's almost like personal development, isn't it? Like to at least it has been for me, like to stop being stuck back here and actually be here, if that makes sense. Like
100%.
Which isn't, people say, oh, you need to practice active listening and stuff, and it's true, but like, yeah, what do you have any advice beyond that? Like,
yeah, 100%. I think there's a line that has always stuck with me, and it's, you are the least important person in this process. So it's like the buyer has a problem that they want to solve, and that's going to lead to a certain outcome for them, right? You're just a mechanism for them to get to that end goal, and you need to park that ego of you at the door, right? You can sway and you can handle and you can influence, but ultimately it's not about you. It never has been about you. So once you're able to put, and it's all about them, if you see yourself as a mechanism or facility to serve their need, or to serve, whether that's they want it or they don't, you know, or you might have to convince them that they a little bit, but you know, if you park that and if you always go in with the mindset that I'm the least important person in this process, then you're always going to be thinking about them and the quality of conversation, rather than serving what you want to hear and what the outcome that you want.
Sweet. That's perfect clippable moment there. So I like yeah, no, absolutely. I think just to throw my tuppence in as well, like I think there's the Sandler idea of like the pendulum. I'm gonna be butchering it here, but it's like either if you're going to the right, the more you go to the right on the pendulum, the more you're pushing, basically pitching,
Hmm.
trying to sell and convince. The more you go to the other side, is like you're actually pushing them away, are actively disqualifying and actually questioning, like, is this actually a good fit and whatnot. And there can be a little bit of reverse psychology in there, but the idea is to go left, so to speak. And I find that that's helped with me, is to actually almost actively try to disqualify people at certain points. Like,
Hmm.
now, how much, like, it sounds like this is something you guys are struggling with, but how much is this actually recognized as an issue in the business? You know, is there motivation to solve this and whatnot? So, you know, something, you know, whatever, something like that. But what do you think on that? Like, does that?
Yeah, 100%. I think like you've got to be brutal with the disqualification. Like I remember I once sat on a demo and a bloke told me for 24 minutes why his business wasn't the right fit for us as a company. And then I was like, why did you take the demo in the first place? And he said, I wanted to find out what you did. I was like, okay, well, we're clearly not right for you. So I let him go. And I think I guess it's slightly different when you're working for yourself and then you're working for a company where you've got targets and things like that. For me, a lot of my active disqualification comes from, do I actually want to work with this person? And I know it sounds really sort of dumb and naive, and you'll probably go, oh, you know, you can't work with people that you like all the time. I'm like, well, you kind of can. Like, and I think it's is the quality of conversation going the way that you want? Do you feel like the person is engaging in what you're saying, believes in the points that you're trying to make, and wants to continue with that? If that's not the case, then you know you can ask the direct question. Like I think you mentioned it there. You know, it seems like you're not interested. It seems like you're not interested, or you're going this way. You know, am I right? And I think it's not being afraid to ask those difficult questions. It's like sometimes as a salesperson, you want to protect your pipeline. You know, you want to inflate your stats. You want to make sure that you've got all of these things there, and you know you're almost scared to let people go. But if someone's being difficult or clearly doesn't believe in what you're trying to sell them, then cut them off.
Yeah, no, that's right. And that goes back to the pros and cons of being a salaried seller versus working for yourself, right? And I think that is definitely one of the pros, is you can kind of yeah, you can, what's the word, curate, or I don't know,
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean, like your client base, who you work with.
yeah,
um I think everybody has a price, right? Where you'd be like, all
yeah.
right,
Of course you
I'm
do,
willing
mate.
for a douchebag, but yeah, you can pay me like $5,000 day rate, fair enough.
Yeah, listen, mate. If Saudi came calling and asked me to go and play centre mid for Al Hilal, I'd turn up and put my lace up the tiempos, even though I'm overweight and can hardly ping a pass anymore. But yeah, I'd go.
Yeah, exactly. I think one thing we didn't talk about, we've got a few minutes left, is maybe
Yeah.
some of the cons of working for yourself. Like, what sort, is there stuff that you've struggled with, or that just generally pisses you off, or?
Yeah, I guess you got the classic pissing you off is just time wasters when you're dealing with them at the start of the pipeline. Like, you know, people who will message you, but they've messaged like 17 other people and they're just trying to beat you up on price. And you're like, oh, for God's sake, like, you know, I know you're never going to deal with me, but I have to take this call anyway. Um, so like that's frustrating. I think one of the biggest things, it's like, you know, when you've got, for example, where I came from managing a team, like for me, it was like on me every day to show up and be at 100% because I've got this team who are relying on me to do so. When you're relying on yourself, like say, for example, I don't know, you stay up too late one night watching documentaries on YouTube, or, you know, you might pop out to the pub on a Tuesday night to go and watch the footy or whatever. Like to get up in the morning and not go, oh, you know what, I'll have another couple of hours in bed, you know, to get up and do that. It's like to have to do that. That's the difference when you don't have someone who you know is going to have a right paddy at you when you're going to come in. Also, just like being disciplined with your campaigns. Like if you've got one campaign that's absolutely flying and you're getting like 20 meetings on them in a month and you're like, oh, this is great, I love it, and then there's one meeting where you're like scraping around to even have a conversation. It's having that discipline to be able to go, right, I'm going to switch up from this one that's not performing so well onto one that's going to be a right kick in the ass, because you're like, oh, you know, you want to take the easy route, but ultimately you've just got to bloody do it, haven't you, mate?
Yeah, yeah. I think having a certain amount of like, what would you call it, like professional pride or whatever, is
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I don't want to let people down.
Yeah.
maybe part of that comes from like I almost want to prove that like I do know what I'm doing. I am good at this. That's why we've gone out and started something, right? Otherwise, I wouldn't have bothered. So yeah, no,
I think most salespeople have a crippling sense of self-doubt, don't they? So they're like always trying to like prove it to themselves by proving it to other people. And like the last person they want to let down is obviously their customer, but then they also don't want to let down themselves. And I don't think you should ever lose that. I think the best salespeople always have a sense of existential dread almost every day when they're trying to either hit targets or impress to their customers that they have if they're working for themselves. And I think you should never lose that. If you're in that case, in that sense of frame of mind where you're just like coasting, yeah, everything's good, manana, like I don't think it's a game for you, is it? What about you, Mark? What are some of the things that you've seen since you and Sean have been doing it?
Similar to what you've said, really. Dealing with tax, HMRC stuff has been absolutely. Yeah, I'm just trying to think what else really.
Yeah, I love HMRC.
Yeah, it is the existential dread thing. It's the like I don't have a base salary to fall back on.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. Like I prefer it though. Like I really do prefer
I agree.
it. I don't want to be doing like forecasting calls to my boss's boss or like playing all the bullshit politics.
Yeah.
That doesn't. And arbitrary targets. Like if me and Sean want to set a target for ourselves for the business, I want there to be some rationale behind it, not just like, oh, your target's $500,000 this year or it's $1 million.
Yeah.
What's that based on? So sorry, you were going to say something?
No. I agree. I fully agree with you, and I think that I would advise, like, if anyone wants to give it a go, like, just go for it. Like, I think the best thing that you have with sales is that you can earn money immediately just based off of the back of like your own personality and your own skill set. Like you know how to sell your own product, which is like which is super blessed and rare to do. And I think it echoes your point, Mark, with about like targets and forecasting and things like that. Like you're able to be the master of your own destiny and set your own targets based off of like what you want to earn. If you're like, right, I'm happy to earn this amount this month, but it means I can take 2 days a week off, I can spend more time with my family or go on holiday, or there's a festival I want to go to or I want to go on holiday. It means you can earn according to what you need and take on as much work as you would like, providing you're good enough to win it. So I guess that's where the existential dread comes in.
If this helps anybody listening to this, just bear this in mind, right? Because as you were saying that, I was like, no, don't create more competition for us. But the thing is, like, listen to this. They're as of the start of 2024, there were about 5.5 million SMEs, and just in the UK, and that's assuming you're not selling to Europe, to the US.
Yeah.
5.45 million small businesses. That's 1 to 50 employees, basically.
Yeah.
And then the rest of that is there's like 40 odd thousand with like 50 to 250 employees. So there's loads. Obviously, they're not all B2B. The cold calling or whatever you're doing isn't going to work for everybody. But yeah, I mean, there's loads of business to go after. There's enough for everybody.
Yeah, and I think gone are the days of like, you do what I do, so I should hate you. It's like realistically, we do a very similar thing, you and I, Mark, and like same with Sean. Like we talk about all the time and help each other out. I think like what goes around comes around, and I think ultimately there's enough work and enough business out there for everyone. If you have that spirit of like we'll help each other out, as long as you're not mugging each other off, it just makes it such a better landscape. And I think gone are those 20 years ago like rigid oh, you're my competitor, I should hate you type stuff.
Yeah. If you do that, you're just gonna like sort of box yourself off into a corner, and especially with LinkedIn, right? I mean, I was thinking about this yesterday. Like, it irritates me that most of the people that comment on my posts are people that do the same stuff as me or adjacent. Like, can I just get some like actual people in my ICP that are like engaging with my stuff? But I suppose it doesn't really work like that, does it?
No, I don't think so. And I think like a lot of our ICPs, if we're talking about like the SMEs, like often you have to like educate them on like why this works. It's like it's similar to what I mentioned earlier in people who don't come from our world have such a perception of what it is that we do that you almost have to break down that barrier and go, it does actually work, and it's not how you think it is. Like, it's totally different. And I think, you know, they're not on LinkedIn looking for cold calling advice, unfortunately.
Yeah, but we do often hear, like when we're doing our own prospecting for ourselves, you know,
Yeah.
it wouldn't work for us. We have a very niche audience, or we have
we have a niche market. Yeah.
yeah. It's like, mate, you're selling like, I don't know, like you're selling like some widgets to business, you know, whatever it is. It's like,
You're selling recruitment, mate. Like, sure.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I guess in closing, I would just say, like, look, it comes down to who do you help, how do you help them, like, what are the problems you solve for people, and why would they be motivated to solve that, right?
100%.
So,
and I think as a closing point, I think everyone's got an opinion. You know, everyone says opinions are like arseholes, don't they? But like, everyone's got an opinion, and everyone will tell you, you have to do this way. You have to do it this way. I like doing business this way. I like cold calling this way. Ultimately, if it's working for you and it's going well, stick your middle finger up to everyone who doubts you. Do you know what I mean? That's it. And I think, you know, that's the only advice. That's the best advice I could give to anyone. Is like, if what's doing is working for you, ignore everyone else and try and help people, because you never know what's going to come around and help you out further down the line.
Yeah. Be yourself, unless being yourself isn't working, then just fake it. Awesome, man. Before I cut this off, two things. First thing, is there anything you want to add, any kind of closing points beyond that? And then the second thing is, where can people connect with you or find out more?
Of course. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I mean, I've got a few real exciting things coming up with my client Good Effects, which we're looking forward to sharing with everyone over the next few weeks. You know, I've been working with Rob and Tom for a while now, and a big shout out to those guys. And yeah, just if you want to, if you're an SDR, if you're or someone who's thinking about going and freelancing, like, listen, shoot me a DM. I'm always happy to help. Like, I fully believe in paying things forward before asking for anything in return. So, you know, if you're an SDR who's struggling with their calls, just needs a second advice from someone who they don't work with, feel free to shoot me a DM. If you're someone who's done it for a while and is thinking, you know what, I want to give this a go for myself, feel free to shoot me a line as well, because, you know, I can tell you the good, bads, and uglies. And yeah, as I mentioned, always happy to help. Yeah, Harry Jones. There's about 1 million of us on LinkedIn. Unfortunately, my mother named me a very common name, but yeah, you'll find me somewhere.
Yeah, and I think the same goes for you know, like founders, business owners that are still doing their own sales and stuff. Like, if you're struggling, reach out to Harry or myself. Like, if you want to ask any questions, look, we're not going to try and pitch you. It's just like, let's just have a chat. And always happy to share ideas. So yeah, second that for sure.
Good stuff. Thanks for your time, Mark. I appreciate you inviting me on. And yeah, nice one.
Pleasure. See you soon, man.
See ya.